Yeah, well, there was certainly no catching before I got to rock bottom. I just hit that deck real hard, and I was like, well, rock bottom's a great place to build from, it's sturdy.
What would you tell someone that is facing rock bottom right now? What advice would you give them?
Give yourself grace and realize that, like, sometimes things happen for you, not to you. Give yourself time. We've got time. Time heals all,
Time heals all.
Time
truly.
heals all.
Even if it feels like there's no time sometimes, there's always time.
There's always time, man. Yeah.
Yo. Hey guys, it's Kat, your host of BeRad, the podcast, and I'm so excited to announce our very first podcast sponsor, Delta G Ketones. When they first reached out to me, I was skeptical, but I'd heard of cyclists taking them and having huge breakthroughs in their performance. And then I saw a few trail runners, a few pro trail runners taking them and swearing by Delta G Ketones. So obviously I had to give it a go. What I didn't expect is a huge difference in my sleep and recovery. I always toss and turn. Sleep is a huge thing for me. And I can say that Delta G really helped knock me out. And the cognitive benefits. I've been taking Delta G before a long day of podcasting or before a long day just sitting at the computer, either doing edits, coaching, meetings. And I really feel more engaged with my work when I take Delta G. Check out Delta G using the link in my show notes to take the Delta G ketone quiz to figure out which ketones work for you. Woohoo! Thank you guys.
Hey, man. Yeah, we're good.
Well, Lucy, welcome to BeRad, the podcast. I am Kat, your host. And with me, I have Lucy Bartholomew, longtime fan and friend, ultra runner. You're like famous for just, your bubbly personality, your cooking, and really just sharing with the world. You're pretty vulnerable on all your platforms, and that's gained a lot of love and respect from a lot of people. But I ask this of everyone because it's different, it's, usually how we're perceived is different than how we view ourselves. And how do you view yourself? Like, what would you say your role is in this sport?
Wow. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. It's, that's a hard question to start with. I think I view myself as, I joined the sport of ultra running. I ran my first 100K at 15 years old. Mm-hmm. So I still view myself as like that young, innocent, kind of very unaware, blissfully unaware, and inexperienced. I still feel like I'm such a student of this sport. And so I definitely find it challenging that like people come to me and want answers and have questions. But I think my role in the sport is to be that vulnerable and to show that like we so often post about the victories and the good times and the sunny days and the good runs. And what I really love sharing is that it's just not like that all the time. Yeah. And just being completely, open and honest about the good, the bad, and the ugly, and talk about especially barriers for women, especially young women. And what I have really come to love is getting out there and going to like schools and doing talks because I started so young, these kids relate to the age at which I was, and I can kind of talk to their level, which I feel, the sport is an older sport, and so sometimes it's not as relatable. But, I'm not saying running 100Ks at 15 is relatable, but it's, I definitely feel like I can be on that level still with where I'm at. But yeah, it's definitely been a journey to understand where my place is in this sport.
Yeah, totally. And like, I just want to dig a little bit more into that and the social media and the role that that's played because, you not only grew up in the sport, but you grew up with social media in a way that a lot of your teammates didn't. And because of that, like, it's so everyone has watched you grow up. And that's got to be kind of crazy, grow up in the sport, grow up as a person. And do you think that's helped you be vulnerable? And like, how's that affected you? And I'm just curious because like I struggle with social media, you know, but I always admire how you do it. And literally all the time when I'm struggling with it, I'm like, just like post like Lucy does, like just do it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's super challenging. When I ran that 100K when I was 15, you know, we had my family, my dad, who I ran it alongside, we got a lot of bad publicity. You know, a lot of people said she shouldn't do this. She's being forced to do it. She has an eating disorder, an exercise addiction. Her dad is a bad dad for letting her do this, you know, and there was a lot of negativity behind it. And so it was a really kind of harsh way to realize that no matter what you do, there's going to be people that are going to support you, and there's going to be loud people that don't support you. Mm-hmm. And generally the loud, you know, I want to believe that the loud people that don't support you, especially back then, was coming from a place of concern, and it was just poorly communicated. But at the same time, like, they're going to be so loud because they're uncomfortable with what you're doing, and it's something that they haven't done, and so they can't relate or resonate, or they haven't seen it before, so they don't believe that it's possible. Yeah. And so to break those barriers and break down those challenges, you just need to be full force on what you're doing and do it so strongly that it doesn't matter what people say. And so, you know, I ebb and flow with my relationship with social media. I was kind of like, I really enjoyed it. And then coming third at Western States, overnight, I gained, you know, 50,000 followers. And that was 50,000 people that followed me at a time where I was at an unsustainable weight. I was, you know, probably, I was unhealthy in the way that I was approaching running. And so they followed me, and they thought that was my normal. That was default Lucy, when it wasn't. That was me pushing and working to be something that I shouldn't be. And so then to kind of like have to dig myself out of that hole and kind of come back to homeostasis and find who I was and healthy hormones and everything, of course it's going to come with people watching and being concerned and curious and asking like, why are you changing? Why, you know, you were winning and now you're not. And so that was really challenging for me, but it was also, again, just like you're constantly having to be so strong in what you're doing and the direction you're going and steadfast in that it almost is like a constant reminder of like, just keep doing what you're doing, Lucy. Like, blinkers on, share with people will take what they want from anything, share what you can, and just believe that you're on your right path. And whether people want to be on that path with you is kind of up to them.
That's really incredible. And I know from personal experience how hard that is to do.
Yes, I know you can relate to that.
It's hard. And there's so many loud voices that are often louder than your own. And I was just saying it, like, the social media sometimes can almost feel like being in an abusive relationship because you're like, wait, am I the crazy one? Am I the asshole? You know, it's hard. But you're right. And like what you're doing is right. And your whole relationship with running and with yourself, it seems like it's changed a lot in like the last, 7 years that I've known you. Can you take us through like some of those changes? And like, let's start like maybe when you won, the Ultra Trail Australia. You were 21 years old.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel like my why in the sport has more or less remained the same, but it's super interesting when your passion becomes your profession. Mm-hmm. And then that kind of relationship can either go both ways. You either fall more in love with it, or, it's really easy to fall out of love with it. And so, when I won Ultra Trail Australia in 2017 on my 21st birthday, I was just full tilt in love with the sport, and I was on an upward trajectory that just felt unstoppable. And that kind of continued with coming first at Tarawera, third at Western States, first at Ultra Trail Cape Town. Like, it was just kind of like just reassurance after reassurance that I was on the right path, doing the right thing. Unknowingly, I was digging myself a hole that was, that's so much racing. It's 100K after 100 mile with 100K to finish the year. But it was kind of the norm in the sport. And then with that and with those wins comes, a greater sponsorship, more responsibilities, bigger following. And it was kind of like, just keep doing what you're doing. But the sport is elevating at an extreme rate, the women's especially. And so to compete, you have to push harder. And so, it was just an unsustainable trajectory. And at some point you plateau and you also go down. And so kind of...
Sorry, no, you're right. To you. I just want to talk about like what that down looked like in that plateau? Because it's, you know, sometimes for people, for listeners, especially women sometimes who have so much pressure to be everything and to do it all. It's hard to recognize when you're in that plateau or when you're starting on that low, and it's hard to catch it before you're like at rock bottom. So
Totally.
like what did that low look like for you, and when did you start recognize like, oh, things need to change?
Yeah, well, there was certainly no catching before I got to rock bottom. I just hit that deck real hard, and I was like, well, rock bottom's a great place to build from, you know, it's sturdy. But, you know, it's really easy to become obsessed with feeling fit. And I think this is what happened to me. You know, I trained for Western States in 2018, and then I just I didn't want to lose that. I had the 3rd place, and I felt pretty good coming out of it, and that was just a false feeling of good, but I rolled into it. I went and did Trans Rockies. I went and did Transalpine. I raced OCC. I went across to Hong Kong. I raced in Australia, and that's just the last 6 months of the year that I did that.
That's crazy.
It's wild, you know. I say it now, and I write it down, and I'm like, it's just bonkers that I would do this to myself, you know, and I would never tell anyone to do similar. But, you know, for me, it was my body was just, I've never had a stress fracture or really, you know, touch wood, any injury. But what broke for me was my headspace. I just despised the sport. And I was doing it. I was going through the motion. And you can do that. But if you're not waking up, you know, every now and then at least with enjoyment and excitement for what you're doing, then you've really got to recalibrate and step back of what you're choosing to spend your time doing. Because I was just, going through the motions and not enjoying it, almost fearing it, and just kind of like in my own head about it, and wasn't enjoying where I was, what I was doing. And I think for me, it was really important to kind of recognize my vocabulary around the whole thing. Like, I don't have to run. I don't need to run. I want to run, and I get to run. And those are like same sentences, different word. And kind of just recognizing how I was talking about the sport and what my quote unquote job is, was really important to kind of realizing that my mind is unhappy, my body is unhappy, and actually, like, if you look at it broadly, like, my relationships are also suffering, my, you know, everything is just not as good as what I can believe it is.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, like, became pretty eye-opening towards the end of that year.
Yeah. So, on social media, for a while, it looked great. And, like, did it take a while for you to recognize what you were feeling, or were you trying to convince yourself that everything was all good? Yeah.
Just an incredible actor, you know? And it's wild that you scroll back to 2019, which was my low year after 2018, and you would think I was having the time of my life. Yeah. But I was battling some serious demons inside, and I was also, like, putting on, like, a pretty good show out there. But it was, it wasn't what it seemed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so tell me about 2019. Like, tell me about the turning point when you decided something's got to change, and then how you battled those demons and turned it around and are, you know, able to show up as the person you are today. Like, how did you get through that? What did it look like? And what was, like, that moment that you knew it needed to change?
Yeah, so at the end of 2018, I kind of, like, on my last race was realized that this was just not, like, I hated the whole race. And I had a returning spot for Western States. And my theory was what worked in 2018 will work in 2019. Like, just rinse, repeat the training. And so I got my journal out. I tried to do the exact same workouts on the exact same days.
I laugh because... Yup, me too.
And it was just not the same. The times were not the same. The feelings were not the same. The excitement wasn't there. And, you know, I could fake it for a little bit, but it was eating away at me that I was like, if it's not this, it's going to be terrible. And so I ended up picking up a coach who his theory was more is more. Like, just run more, you'll get better at running. And it wasn't what I needed. Then I stood on the start line of Western States, everyone thinking, man, she's come third on her first try at 22. Like, she's here to win. And I remember going up the escarpment and just thinking, I don't even want to be here. And I knew that people were looking at being like, who is this? Like, this isn't the Lucy we saw last year, because I had completely changed. My body had, you know, it was like, well, if you're not going to do it, we'll do it. And, you know, I think that's the cool thing about our body is it wants to live and it wants to survive, and it'll suck for a little bit, but it'll do what it needs to do. And so I got through Western States, finished, in like, I don't even know what position. And I remember thinking, there's people in this sport, and like my dad, who's been waiting like 10 years to do this race, who would kill to be taken that spot. And here I was, and I just like screwed my way through it and was just like, and I just was like, I'm not respecting this sport, this distance. You only, 100 miles is not a healthy distance to run. I'm fully aware of that. And so you only get to spend those cookies a few times on your body. And if I'm going to waste it just like fucking around at Western States, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And so that was probably like really eye-opening to me. After that, I left that coach who was telling me more to do more, took some time off, flew into Chamonix again, just like flew into UTMB week and was like, I don't want to be here. Like, these mountains don't inspire me. I can't meet this energy. I don't relate to it. These people are frothing running. I'm not, And I got out. Like, I was signed up for CCC, decided not to run. And that's when I found, then it was lockdown. And that was, for me, like, I know it was such a tough time for the world, but it was honestly a time for me to be like, who is Lucy without running? Because maybe it's time to find that out. And that was like a really important time for me to just, Australia had really hard lockdowns. We had an hour of running a day, and I would do my hour, and then I would put my time and effort and energy into other things. And I realized that if I just ran an hour for the rest of my life, I'd be totally fine. I don't need running to be ultra. I don't need it to be amazing and incredible and big and Chamonix and Salomon. I don't need sponsorship. I can just do it.
Yeah.
And so that was like pretty cool. And then coming out of COVID and lockdown, it was just, I'm just so grateful to be able to do this. And I just want to respect that now and move forward with this kind of attitude of like, if it all ended tomorrow, what I've got going on, I'd be totally fine with it. And I could still run, and I could still be a great version of Lucy without it.
Yeah. Early on when we started talking about this, you mentioned that your why never changed. What's the why?
Well, the why will always be the people, like I ran my first 100K with my dad. It was always about connecting with him. And then it's always been that I just absolutely love that running brings together people from all over the world doing a sport that's, fairly accessible if compared to other sports. And, like you walk through Chamonix at the moment for UTMB week, and it's just like there are people from everywhere. You hear every language, and everyone's just on a mission to do and achieve something that some find it hard to believe that they can. And it's just like it's really cool to be able to be a part of that and to listen to that.
Yeah, totally. It is so crazy. And especially this is my first year being here and not racing. And I'm like, wow, I get to enjoy this on a completely different level.
Yeah. You can connect with people because you have that more energy to expend on it. Yeah. On a deeper level.
And I've been there. I've like been in Chamonix and been like, I don't care about these mountains or running, or like I remember being here in 2021. Where when my hip injury got really bad, right after the race, like during CCC that year. But I remember walking around with CCC before and being so grateful for the mask and the hat because no one could recognize me,
totally.
And that's not, I love this sport and I love being here now because like I love everyone that I get to run into, and I love that people know me and like I get to meet new people that way. And I love my team, but like when it's bad, it's bad.
Yeah.
And it took me a lot longer than you to get out of it because I had some life stress in Colorado to deal with, and also a very bad injury.
Yeah.
But I was the same thing after Western. I just like kept racing, and then tried to emulate. Exactly. And then I did UTMB and like had a decent day at UTMB, but was, like not stoked, at the finish line. And then I kept training after UTMB, and that's when like things started going really downhill for me. And it takes a long time to dig yourself out of. So I think you're right. Maybe if there are stricter lockdowns for me, like I might have been forced to, but I still got to run 6 hours every day if I wanted to, which was not good.
Yeah. Well, I would say lockdown saved my running career.
That's amazing.
It was, in a tough time, it was definitely a a time that I look back on and I'm like a little grateful for, just to really center myself and realize that, I'm not Lucy the runner, I'm Lucy.
Yeah.
Simple.
And how do you keep that, because running is your full-time job, and how do you keep that relationship with running and competing, where, competing is not, you're obviously a fierce competitor, but it's, when you talk to me and you talk to the people in the sport, it doesn't seem like a priority. And like, how do you keep that while still valuing running as your career?
Yeah, I think that's, it's an interesting one. Like, I don't even view running as my full-time job. I even have a hard time saying it's my profession. Like, and maybe that's like imposter syndrome, or like I have having a hard time having ownership on it. But like, I coach, and that's in the running space, but it's got so little to do with running. Like I only coach young girls, and I barely talk to them about their running. I'm talking to them about their confidence, their self-esteem, their nutrition, like just trying to build that whole aura around health and fitness. Healthily, and that doesn't mean just the exercise component. I write articles for a running magazine, and they're very rarely about running. They're about the things, the places it's taken me, and the people, and the food, and the culture, and the environments. And so running's like this, it's this North Star, it's this thing that guides what I do, but it's very rarely what I do. And I go for my run every day. And then when I finish that run, I don't talk about that run. I don't find the need to pull it apart or talk to people about running. I want to talk to people about other things. And it's funny, like being in the Solomon house, people are just, they talk about running a lot. Yeah. It's the shoes, it's the nutrition. And I'm just not that person. I'm like, tell me about your last boyfriend. Tell me about, like, give me the goss,
Yeah, totally.
And I just, I think that's kind of like, I just have hard boundaries of what is running, and there's seasons for it. UTMB week is a season of it. But then after that, I'm very happy to step out of that, put on some normal clothes, and go walk down a street that no one will know who the hell I am. Yeah. And I love that.
And what's that going to look like for you? Like, you mentioned, embracing the other parts of Lucy during the lockdown. What are those other parts besides cooking?
Yeah, I was going to say, well, I did the cookbook.
Yeah.
I started the coaching to fill in time. I love to write. I love to draw. I love to, I have my dog, totally. I'm really close with my family, and, I want to be that friend that's there for people, but not that friend that just talks about running, Yeah. And I have so many friends that aren't runners, and they don't care about my running, They're like,
isn't that the best?
Isn't that the best? We all need those, please.
That's a huge reason. Like, I moved home to Hawaii with Carson. Carson and I grew up together, but being in Boulder all the time was hard. It was running all the time and very little to do outside of running.
Yeah.
And I moved home, and I was so much happier, because there was balance. Totally. All of a sudden, I feel you. And that's, something else that I want to check in about is like, you're far away from the rest of the running world in Australia most of the year. And
how good's that?
What?
How good's that sometimes, though?
It is. And that's something that I've loved. But something that I miss is training partners, and how, you do most of your training by yourself. How is that? And like, how do you not get through the training? We all get through it, but so I find it's hard to push myself. Maybe that's just because I'm coming back from injury too, and burnout. So I'm like la-di-da-da-da all the time.
I'm pretty la-di-da-di-da, don't worry. No, I mean, like, again, it's seasons. I travel a lot, I think this year I'm away from Australia 8 months. So it's a lot. And when I'm traveling, I travel with people, or I use people to help me find routes. And so I travel a lot with people and train with them. And then when I come home, I can think of nothing better than to run my pace, on my time, on my schedule, where I want. And so I kind of just see it as a beautiful kind of reset from all of that. And it does get lonely. Where I live in Australia, it's not in a city. It's not in a mecca of running. It's like bush kangaroos. It's what you think of when you think of Australia. But it's my dad and my dog, and that's all I'm really there for. And so, yeah, I mean, I probably don't push myself as hard, but I think that means that when I am with people and it is time to put my head down, I can.
Totally.
And so I'm not stressing about it. I'm not worried about it. I'm not comparing on Strava. And like, I've spent time in Boulder where there's people doing more, doing what, you know, doing things you should be doing, going to the gym, doing whatever. And it was just not my place, because I was constantly like, oh, I should be doing the PT exercises and going to strength and, you know, double running. And like, it's kind of like shoulda, woulda, coulda, you know, but at the end of the day, I do what I feel is right for me. And in Australia, I can really tune into that intuition.
Yeah. And let's not, you do a lot of PT. And I think that's probably why you've been so injury free, or strength. Yeah. I've learned a lot.
I do cross train. Oh, I do core.
Yeah. I'm like, dang, I should do that. And it helps. It helps me, I think, you know, for me with the travel. Like travel and, you know, I also work full time, and I'm like technically on paper a full-time professional athlete. Yeah. And it is too much. And I think
about balancing.
And it's unbalanced right now. And something that Kirsten and I are really trying to do is like, you know, take some of it out, you know, which making the decision to just move full-time home and spend some time, you know, like you spend some time away, but your home's in Australia. I think that like, that was the first step. Totally. I gotta like say no more to stuff though, because it's ridiculous how much we got going on. And then, you know, what goes is like the training and the, you know, want to push and like the want to run with other people.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, I want to talk a little bit more about your growth in the sport, and, you know, we've talked about where you came from, but, and this isn't something I ask everyone, but for you, like the sky's the limit for you. You know, you hit rock bottom at 23, you know, and now you're out of it and you have this really awesome, fresh perspective on running. Like, what's your biggest running goals, you know? And it can be wild and crazy, or it can be just like more community, like whatever. But I want to hear, like, what does Lucy dream of?
Oh man, currently it's just UTMB, right? Like, I'm just very much what's in the focus and not too much worried about the future. I mean, this year I've been doing Ironman, and so I'm doing Kona World Championships, and so I'm excited to kind of like explore that and give it a crack. But like, you know, there's like local races that I'm keen to return to, but it's really just kind of connecting with the community. I feel like I was absent as a person in 2019. Like, I was present in body, but absent in mind. I went through the motions, and then COVID kind of pulled me away from the community, especially overseas. And so like really what I dream of doing is just like more school talks, more kind of engaging with people, and just kind of, just showing people that like it's okay to struggle, and it's okay to have these rock bottom moments, and it's okay to like go over that line, you know. It's inevitable when you're chasing something that you love and you're pushing to find your potential. It's totally normal to step over that. But it's like, if you can learn from it and then potentially share about it so that other people can also relate and then learn, like, that's the beautiful thing about like human connection. And then I mean, races wise, I want to get back to Western States, of course. Like, the last time I did it, I DNF'd. I had a concussion. The time before that, I hated the whole thing. And the time before that, I came third and led for 100 Ks. You know, I've had every experience there. I've also watched my dad this year finish 2 minutes over cutoff in what was the most heartbreaking day of my life. And so I want to bring him back, and I want to have a race where we both just enjoy running for what it is, and Western States for everything that it encompasses. So that's kind of like my big goal for 2024. And
do you know where you're racing back in?
I was thinking of doing, is it Black Canyon in February? Yeah, I was thinking of doing that. Sadly, Tarawera is off, so the one closest to home is no longer.
It's not a golden ticket anymore. Oh, that's a bummer.
Such a bummer.
Why not?
I think Thailand has taken it over, but I don't really want to go.
I think I'm going to try and race in Thailand.
Heck yeah.
If I'm healthy enough, you know, I'm very much
God, I'd love to see that.
I would love to go back. But it's like, so with this big giant injury that's been going on for so many years, I'm like, just trying to be very patient, because that's been my problem in the past.
Open-minded. You know, I think if it happens, it happens, but it's also not like there's not another race that we could pivot to.
Exactly. Exactly. And so like I'm you know, I'm not signed up yet. I'm putting out there that I want to, but if it doesn't happen, I'm like fine, because I'm not gonna race not healthy ever again. You
Heck
know, I've
yes.
done it too many
Amen,
freaking
sister.
times. So what would you tell someone that is facing rock bottom right now and doesn't maybe have a pandemic to help them get out of it? What advice would you give them?
Give yourself grace and realize that, like, you know, sometimes things happen for you, not to you. You know, I feel like instead of feeling like this is a victim of something, just feel like this is like a slingshot effect. You're getting pulled back to fly forward. And I feel like that's what this has been for me. You know, like, I got pulled back for a few years, and now I'm starting to gain that momentum to really kind of like find my potential. So, you know, give yourself time and grace, and just give yourself a lot of self-love for it, because it's really challenging, and there'll be judgments, and there'll be people who will criticize, and they'll tell you what you should do and what you shouldn't do. But really tune into that internal compass of what feels right, and have that support team around you, build that team, invest in yourself, and just give yourself time. We've got time. Time heals all, you know?
Time heals all.
Time heals
truly.
all.
Even if it feels like there's no time sometimes, there's always time.
There's always time, man. Yeah.
You know, I want to, we both have a million things, and I'm so grateful you came. So I want to, you know, make sure we're efficient here. But I ask this question of everyone, because anyone who's great at what they do, and believe it or not, imposter syndrome or not, you're great at what you do. All of it. The social media, as an athlete, as like a community member, as a representative for Solomon, and like women's sports as a whole. But to be great at something, you know, it means that your mind ticks a little different. Like, you just work different from the average person. What is it about you that works just a little bit different?
I think, you know, my greatest asset is my ability to do the mundane daily. You know, I pride myself in that I will do the basics well. I will sleep early. I will eat well and enough. I will do the training. I will grind through things. You know, I love monotony. You know, I will swim laps in a pool till the cows come home. I will ride up and down the same road if it's the only road that I feel comfortable on. I will run the same track. I can just find the beauty in the repetition. And I think that that's just something that you either enjoy or you don't enjoy. And that's probably like my dad has said ever since I was young, that I would just happily eat the same things, go through the same daily routine, rise, rinse, repeat. And all I've done is add in run into that. And that's probably where my mind is a little bit different to people that need that, you know, that change. The only thing that changes for me is the location of the routine,
which is like a big change.
Yeah, it's quite
nice. You know, what's so funny is, you know, who said that like exactly a year ago, as her greatest asset was Des Linden.
Oh, well, I'll take that.
She was like, I'm not better than anyone else. I just like to do the same thing over and over and over again.
Oh my gosh. Well, what do they say? The definition of crazy is just repeating, you know?
Yeah. But I think it's actually the definition of crazy or insane is repeating something over and over again that doesn't work for you.
And expecting the same result.
Right.
So
if you are doing the same thing and it's working,
yeah,
I think that's not crazy.
Don't fix what's not broken.
Yeah. Exactly. Awesome. And then the last one that I always end on, because just like the first question, like we know who you are to us, but there's a whole nother side of you that I'm sure people don't know, as there always is. What is something that you're proud of that, you know, I might not know and your fans and followers might not know?
Oh, man. I think I'm proud of my relationship. Well, you probably would know. Like, my relationship with my dad is my greatest asset in life, you know? Yeah. Like, the connection we have, and the, you know, like, Australia and where I live is like a place, but it's a home because of where he is and where my dog is. And so probably, like, that's, like, the side that, you know, like, I think people see that running connects us, but like our relationship away from running is just unmatched, you know, and it's something that is just, I'm so incredibly grateful for. I've talked to him every day in Chamonix, just to kind of like, he's my rock, even wherever I am in the world. And so I think that's probably like the greatest thing that I'm the most proud of, my biggest asset.
That's so incredible. I know a lot of people. I have an athlete that I coach who was at Western States and watched her dad finish and was like, I just hope, and he has a daughter young, and he was like, I just hope I have the type of relationship that Lucy and her dad has with my daughter one day. And her daughter's like, and he's an amazing dad, and his daughter's like not even 2 yet, but it's cool. It's cool to set that example for everyone, and like, good for you guys, because I know that something is, parenting's hard.
Oh yeah.
And relationships are hard.
Yeah. And like if you were to go back in time, like dad hasn't always been super supportive of my running, and, didn't think it was a career path, and was just kind of like, fatherly concerned about getting into the public space, being on social media. Still to this day, he reads every comment that goes on my posts and stuff.
You're like, Dad, don't tell me.
Well, he like flags it. He's like, oh, this will get to her head. We need to discuss this.
Oh, that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, so he's there like that. But
so he doesn't just flag it. He wants to discuss it with you.
Oh, he'll discuss it. Wow. Yeah. And that's like a really cool thing. But also, there was a time that, I said that I was going on school camp, and I went and did a big race, and, he found out, and it was like, we had a lot of kind of, we're just so alike that sometimes we butt heads. And especially when I was younger, I was just not a fan. So It's really cool that our relationship has changed, and it's because he gave me the freedom to spread my wings and be me. And we realized that, when we're both the best version of ourselves doing what we love, and it's the same thing, it's a pretty special combination.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's like that, and that's really cool that he looks out for you in that ways, and not just like hides it from you, but discusses it. So you guys both
we're an open family.
Yeah. That's awesome. How does he feel about being pseudo famous for you?
Well, I think he loves it. I think it added a lot to his Western States experience. It probably made it more challenging. But I think, in Chamonix this week, I've been more asked how my dad is than how I am. People are just so invested, and it's really, really special. And we've got a film coming out with Solomon about his run at Western States, and it's gonna, I think, be something that people relate to, whether they run or not, whether they know Western States or not, whether they've heard of Lucy Bartholomew or Ash Bartholomew. It's a piece that is just gonna, what I feel like, transcend running, because it's the lessons in it have nothing to do with running.
I'm excited to see it, honestly, and I'm like so disengaged with running, except for looking at results from other races, and because I'm a fan of the sport, but I never watch anything. That I will definitely watch.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be sick. It's out in November.
Okay, awesome. Well, any last words, Lucy?
No, just that it's so cool to connect, because I think, and like this podcast kind of showed, is that our stories actually parallel very similarly.
Totally.
And I think that that's a pretty special thing. And what you're doing in your space and how we're both working together. And it's, I think it's so good for women in sport and people coming up in the sport and having that success, especially at Western States. It's what it does for you. It's cool to be able to say that like people can come to us and we can kind of share our experiences.
Totally. And like it is like the best thing that ever happened to me, and sometimes the worst too,
Amen.
know?
Amen.
And I'm grateful for all of it, because I'm here now because of it. But man, you're smarter than me. You like were able to embrace.
I happened after you. I learned from you.
But I was still at rock bottom when you were. I was like in denial, washing on the bottom. Like, no, I can still see the sun.
Then I joined you down there.
I was like, oh wait, Lucy's floating up. Maybe I can too. Lucy. Well, it's so good to finally connect, and I'm really excited for everything you got in store. UTMB, fine, but just your future in the sport and everything bigger and better that you're doing.
Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Carson.
Thanks, Carson.
Awesome.
You're welcome. Thank you both.
All right.